And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. I have to tell you, my friends, I know I said this yesterday, but I am so glad to be back behind the microphone for you for yet another explosive version of the program. We begin this morning with the Daily Caller. And I know if you're watching on the Ditto Cam, you can see that number one on our list is that the Harris administration is, and I notice that I call it the Harris administration. It's no longer the Biden administration. That guy, though technically in charge, really isn't making any decisions. It's Kamala Harris, Jill Biden, and all of the leftists that are in his administration. It's not Joe. And, you know, we might make an argument that it never was Joe to begin with. But certainly, right now, it's the Kamala Harris administration. And they're forcing the state of Maryland to hire fat female cops. And again, this is a story that I can't hardly believe that I'm reporting on, but I am. And I quote, "The Department of Justice alleged that the Maryland Department of State Police's written and physical tests violated the Civil Rights Act, and now the agency must hire some of the disqualified applicants and relax its testing standards." The DOJ claimed the written test discriminated against black candidates and the fitness test discriminated against female candidates, according to the press release. The United States government argued that the MDSP's hiring procedures were in breach of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. The MDSP, according to the consent decree, will transition to new tests that are subject to review by the DOJ. The department must also hire up to 25 of the applicants who were, quote, unfairly disqualified, but passed the new selection process, according to the DOJ's press release. Now, since 2017, around 91% of white trooper applicants who were evaluated for training classes passed the police officer selection test, or POST, at least once, according to the DOJ's complaint. Now, for black applicants, the rate was around 71%, the complaint reads. The written test includes questions involving basic arithmetic and reading comprehension. For example, applicants are asked to add up the values of stolen items from a burglary, according to one sample post of the practice test. Other questions require applicants to find the spelling and grammatical errors and identify the correct word to use in a sentence. While most of the exam is multiple choice, one section requires the test takers to fill out an incident report based on a sample form. Applicants are also required to take the functional fitness assessment test. Candidates are tested on push-ups, sit-ups, the flexibility reach. I'm assuming that's the touch your toes thing. and a 1.5 mile run. Around 81% of male and 51% of female applicants passed the FFAT at least one time, according to the DOJ. Now, if the applicant fails to meet the standard of any of these tasks, the exam is over and the individual cannot continue the FFAT. The complaint notes, however, that candidates can take the assessment up to 3 times in a given year. So you fail it once, you go, run a little bit every morning, get your physical fitness up, and then you can go take it again. Since it will take time for the NDSP to create new exams, the federal government will let police use the current tests under different standards for the time being. Additionally, they must dole out $2.75 million in back pay to female candidates who failed to meet the agency's initial standards. So, in other words, if you're too fat to pass the police officer's physical fitness exam, they have to hire you anyway. And since only 51% of the female applicants were able to get through the entire test, that means that the state of Maryland has to hire fat female cops. Now, this is nothing, discriminatory or anything. But if you're overweight and you can't pass a basic physical fitness test, then you're I guess by definition kind of a fatty. And if it's determined that you happen to be female and you're in that 49% that couldn't pass the test, well, then if they have to hire you, then obviously they're being forced to hire fat female cops. And this is the epitome of the DEI culture that we live in right now. And I saw a meme on Facebook, I guess it was yesterday. The DEI stands for didn't earn it. And that's absolutely true, because we're forcing companies and now police agencies to hire people that can't pass the most basic of exams. I was talking to my father-in-law. He's a retired Master Chief from the United States Navy, and he said you would be shocked at the entrance requirements for even the United States military. Now, they've since changed, very recently, but they relaxed the standards so far that even, the most unqualified of candidate could get through the door. Now, that's just what we need, isn't it? Police officers and members of our military that can't pass a basic physical fitness exam. I've never heard of anything more ridiculous. How are you going to chase down a robbery suspect if you can't even run a mile and a half? Which, by the way, running a mile and a half, even jogging, really not that big a deal. You could walk a 10-minute mile pretty easily, probably less than that. But to not even be able to run a mile and a half when part of your job is physically demanding, that's a big problem. And, it directly puts people's lives and property at risk. And we're doing that based on characteristics that are everything that is superficial about a person. The color of your skin, the gender you happen to be. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that we've gone, and I know that we've gone way too far on this whole DEI business. And now it's affecting police departments. Fantastic. Yet another reason why you should all go buy more guns and more ammunition. Speaking of ammunition, you should probably buy some from the Wyoming Cartridge Company. They're a fantastic sponsor of Cowboy State Politics. It's a Wyoming-based manufacturer of ammunition. So go check them out. When you're stocking up because of all these DEI hires, because you have to protect your own property, go check out the Wyoming Cartridge Company. Moving on. The White House has now, and they've always been engaged in this. This is nothing new. But now they're claiming that directly asked questions are misinformation. And, misinformation, that's an interesting term. If you're misinformed about something, it means that you just don't know the truth, right? So if we say that a question cannot be misinformation, it's not possible. Now, the answer might be misinformation. The question might derive from somebody who's being misinformed, but a question itself cannot be misinformation. Not according to Karine Jean-Pierre from the Post-Millennial, and I quote, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters on Monday that it was, quote, misinformation when she was asked why Congress has come back in order to approve more funding for North Carolina under the Hurricane Helene efforts, when Congress did not have to reconvene in order for the Harris administration to send $157 million in aid to the country of Lebanon. So wait a minute. We have extra cash floating around that we can send to Lebanon, but we don't have enough cash floating around that we can send it to North Carolina. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's been a news story for about the past week that FEMA spent a lot of their money, in fact, $1.4 billion, in housing migrants and giving migrants their little gift cards. Apparently you can violate our borders, violate our laws, and not only will we give you a place to stay, we'll give you medical treatment, and we'll give you some cash on top of it. Well, all of that came from the Federal Emergency Management Organization, FEMA. And, nobody had the foresight to say, well, maybe we ought to save this stuff for the hurricane because we're entering hurricane season. Well, they didn't. And now they're broke. And Congress has to come back and authorize more money for FEMA so that we can actually take care of the devastation that's happened in North Carolina and other states, eastern Tennessee, where I used to live in Johnson City. I saw a news report that it's pretty well flooded too. Anyway, so Fox reporter Peter Doocy asked Karine Jean-Pierre, quote, if Biden's got money for people in Lebanon right now without Congress having to come back, what does it say about his values if there's not enough money now for the people in North Carolina? Now, Jean-Pierre cut him off saying, quote, your whole premise of the question is misinformation. In other words, it's the Karine Jean-Pierre version of, I know you are, but what am I? Come on, man. We're just claiming that all of this is misinformation. Well, listen to her. This is kind of long, so we might do a little stop and start here. But here's that whole exchange between Peter Doocy and White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre.
And on this issue of funding, the administration has money to send to Lebanon without Congress coming back. But Congress does have to come back to approve money to send to people in North Carolina. Do I have that right?
Here's what I'm going to be very clear about. The president and the vice president has had a robust whole of government response to this. Hundreds of millions of dollars. I said it at the top, more than
a whole of government response to this whole thing. That's why we have news reports of FEMA not showing up, of people being offered $750 when their house was completely destroyed by the hurricane. A whole of government approach. Now, again, the people that are engaging in misinformation are standing at the front of the room and they work for the Harris administration, Karine Jean-Pierre. But she's claiming that it's Peter Doocy that's engaging in misinformation, not anybody in the White House.
$200 million that we have directly put towards survivors here for disaster help. And that's because of this president's commitment to make sure that we are there for communities that are impacted. We take this very seriously again. We take this very seriously. And before the hurricane hit, we pre-positioned more than 1,500 federal folks on the ground to help. And so we have made...
Okay, all right. Let's just hold on just for a second. So they pre-positioned 1,500 people before the hurricane. Now, North Carolina, while it's not as big as Wyoming, it's still a pretty long state. So if you think about it, you have a hurricane that's going to ravage pretty much the entire state of North Carolina, and you only allocate 1,500 people. Now, Karine Jean-Pierre wants to say that that's a lot of people. That's a ton that are there to help those folks who were affected, that lost their entire homes, everything they own. But really, when you get down to it, 1,500 people, that's less than would show up for a Friday night football game in Sheridan, Wyoming. It's not a lot of people for an entire state. So keep that in mind. Let's continue.
Sure that every state has gotten their storm requested emergency declaration. They requested it, and we made sure they received it. We've taken this very seriously. More than $200 million that we have provided to the impacted areas. But instead, people want to do disinformation, misinformation, which is dangerous, because then when folks on the ground hear that, they may not want to ask for the help that they need. That is there for them. That's our focus here.
But President Biden is fond of saying, show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. If he's got money for people in Lebanon right now, without Congress having to come back, what does it say about his values? There's not enough money right now for people in North Carolina who need it. That's not misinformation.
Wait, no, that is your whole premise of the question is misinformation, sir. What you do? Yes, it's misinformation.
Is there money to send to Lebanon right now?
I just mentioned to you that we provided more than $200 million to folks who are impacted in the area, and I just shared with you that people are deciding not to. People are deciding.
Okay, all right. I can't handle it. The very question is misinformation, sir. Excuse me? It's been in the news all week long. Mayorkas also admitted that FEMA is absolutely out of money. So how is any of that misinformation? Well, the truth is, none of it is. The misinformation is coming from the front of the room and out of the mouth of Karine Jean-Pierre. It's absolutely incredible, my friends. And, there's the quarter of the hour break. But when we come back, we'll finish up the soundbite and we'll continue with more of the Harris administration. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Actually, the truth is it's probably a little bit higher. I know it's really hard to get more right than 99%. But we keep striving for it, my friends. There is no question that Cowboy State Politics is the most accurate news program, and the Independence Network too is the most accurate news network in the entire state of Wyoming. Yesterday on the podcast, I don't know if you listened to it or not, but you should go back. I told you about a story. Well, I started with the dumb morning show that the Cowpie has put out. And there's some crazy sound bites in it, but I ended the show with a little expose that was put out by Honor Wyoming. Now, they're a political advocacy organization, and they hired somebody to do a giant research project into all of the articles that have been written, political articles that have been written since B. Wayne Hughes, the owner of the Cowboy State Daily, took over. And if you're a conservative, you are 400% more likely to have negative coverage printed about you. And if you are a liberal and you took money from B. Wayne Hughes, you're 100% guaranteed to get favorable coverage 100% of the time. And that just shows you how biased the Wyoming media is. Well, you're not going to get that here at Cowboy State Politics or the Independence Network. We're fair, we're balanced, and we call them as we see them. So before the break, we were talking about FEMA and Karine Jean-Pierre's reaction to anybody questioning whether or not they actually have enough money on the ground. Now, if you listen to Karine Jean-Pierre, she says, well, it's misinformation to even suggest that FEMA is out of money. And we stopped right in the middle of a soundbite, so I'm going to go ahead and play the rest of it. It's basically a back and forth between Fox's Peter Doocy and Karine Jean-Pierre. But I'm going to play the rest of it for you, just so you can hear how vehement that Karine Jean-Pierre is, that FEMA has everything they need, that everybody on the ground in North Carolina and Tennessee and everywhere that was ravaged by that hurricane, everybody has what they need. So listen to the rest of this. We'll just play it all the way through.
Not to.
President
Not
sent a
wait.
letter to Congress that there's not enough money to help people
We're
in North
talking
Carolina.
about the SBA disaster loan.
That's
Yes.
money for people in North
That-
Carolina.
And that's important, and people in North Carolina need that.
Right,
Wait, this
the
is
one saying
nothing
it's running
new.
out.
Peter, this is nothing new. Congress comes together, they provide money, millions of dollars, for disaster relief. We're asking them to do the job that they have been doing for some
And I'm reading
time.
from a letter that President
We're
Biden
doing
sent to
for
Johnson,
some
McConnell,
time.
Schumer, and Jeffries. The president's letter is not misinformation. Would you agree?
No, the way you're asking me the question is misinformation. There is money that we are allocating to the impacted areas.
Okay, so did you hear what she said there? The way that you're asking the question is misinformation. Words mean things, my friends.
2 + 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
Words mean things. So Karine Jean-Pierre says the way in which you're asking the question, that's misinformation. So in other words, it doesn't matter what a conservative says. It doesn't matter what Fox News says. Whatever comes out of their mouth, that's misinformation. Well, the truth on the ground is very different than what Karine Jean-Pierre was saying from the White House press briefing podium. Let's see here. This is from, I'm not exactly sure where this is from, but the headline is, as major hurricane approaches, so this was written like a week ago, Florida, FEMA face severe staffing shortages. And I quote, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is running out of staff to deal with the potential devastation of Hurricane Milton as it barrels towards Tampa with wind speeds in excess of 175 miles per hour. As of Monday morning, so this was yesterday actually, just 9% of FEMA's personnel, or 1,217 people, were available to respond to the hurricane or other disasters, according to the agency's daily operations briefing. To put that into context, over the past 5 years, 1/4 of the agency's staff was available for deployment at this point in the hurricane season. Even in 2017, arguably FEMA's busiest year in the past decade with Hurricane Harvey and Irma that plowed through Florida, Hurricane Maria plunged Puerto Rico into darkness. FEMA's staffing reserves at this point in October were 19%, more than twice the levels that they are now. So, if what we had back then was 19% more than what we've got on the ground right now, there is no way that there's enough people, even if it is 1,500, as Karine Jean-Pierre says, that's nowhere near enough people to respond to this hurricane. The agency said Monday afternoon that it is well equipped to handle the strains. Quote, FEMA is built for this, said Leilani Stainsby, the agency's Deputy Associate Administrator for Response and Recovery. Clearly, another DEI hire. But FEMA is stretched not just by the brutal aftermath of Hurricane Helene, which killed more than 200 people and destroyed sections of western North Carolina. Its staff is also responding to flooding and landslides in Vermont, tornadoes in Kansas, the aftermath of Tropical Storm Debbie in New York and Georgia, and the Watch Fire in Arizona. And those are just the disasters that were declared in the past 2 weeks. So there is no possible way that what Karine Jean-Pierre is saying is the truth. But that's not even the end of it. From the post-millennial, Sarah Higdon, who is on the ground in North Carolina, posted on her Twitter feed. And by the way, the state of things in the media has gotten so bad that sometimes your best source of news is Twitter. Now, of course, you have to weed through all of the editorial commentary, but for the most part, you can get a pretty clear picture of what's happening on the ground if you just go to Twitter or X. So here's what Sarah Higdon of the Post-Millennial said. Quote, I went to all the locations published on the FEMA website. They weren't at any of them. It was like an urban legend. People said they saw them or coordinated with them at some point, but they were there for a day and then they moved around. I thought I found them at the WNC Ag Center, but it ended up being the Red Cross shelter, where the nonprofit was taking care of displaced people. They were obviously there at one point, but the general consensus on the ground is it was chaos. I don't understand that if you want people to find your help, why you wouldn't be in one location and put up signs everywhere for people to find you. My key takeaway was the voluntarist spirit of the area. The key theme was people taking care of people without much of anything from the government. With the exception of local police, EMS, fire and rescue, and search and rescue teams I saw down at the river, and about 1/3 of those people cleaning up the River Arts District were state employees. The only federal assets I saw were two, count them, 1, 2 FEMA agents accompanying 2 ATF agents, and Army Special Forces coordinating with the civilian organization doing Pathfinder operations in remote areas. So the facts on the ground still don't match up with what Karine Jean-Pierre is saying. So really, as it relates to this hurricane and pretty much everything else that comes out of the White House, none of it is the truth. And yet it is Karine Jean-Pierre who is accusing Peter Doocy of Fox News of trafficking in misinformation, when, the reality is that the misinformation is coming directly from the podium itself. Now, it's not just the White House press briefing room where you're finding a lot of misinformation. It's also on just about every other outlet, and I can say just about every other media outlet because most of them are liberal, including Morning Joe. Now, normally I would not even play a soundbite with Joe Scarborough in it. I find that guy revolting. He claimed to be a Republican, and then he was kicked out of office and ended up on PMSNBC. But anyway, from Morning Joe, he says that Trump and his family are preparing for civil war. Quote, this is an increasingly desperate person, an increasingly desperate family who's preparing for civil war. They just are. And he says it like it's a fact, right? So first of all, what civil war are you referring to? And why is it that you think Trump and his entire family are preparing for it? And I quote, Morning Joe's Joe Scarborough proclaimed on Monday that he believes that Donald Trump, along with what he claimed was his desperate family, are preparing for civil war. Scarborough criticized the rally Donald Trump held in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday, taking aim at the president's running mate, J.D. Vance, as well as tech mogul Elon Musk, who spoke at the rally and has endorsed Trump. He also took aim at Trump's family. Eric and Lara Trump both took the stage in Butler over the weekend. Quote, the level of un-American activity that you just saw is stunning. Un-American activity. Perhaps Joe should change his last name to McCarthy. Anyway, that is un-American. They just know that they're lying. He brought in January 6th, denied claims that Democrats had been out to assassinate Trump, despite both would-be assassins having been proponents of Democrat causes. So the two people that tried to kill the president, they are Democrats, or at least they agree with the Democrat ideology. And Joe Scarborough, he won't have any of it. He'll deny that any of that had anything to do with the Democrat Party. And he just throws around accusations that Trump is preparing for a civil war. Well, here's at least part of this. Is a pretty long soundbite. So you know what? Actually, we're at the bottom of the hour. So let's go ahead and take a break. And then we'll, when we come back, we'll hit the Joe Scarborough piece. And I'll tell you why why President Trump isn't preparing for civil war, but rather it's the Democrats that are doing that. They know that's the only way that they're going to win because Americans are going to stand up in this election. More after the break. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but it's hunting season. And one thing that you can be absolutely certain of is while you're tromping around in the boonies, at some point it's going to snow. A lot. And you definitely want to make sure that you keep your feet nice and toasty warm. The best way that you can do that is to order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Watch out. Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The program is only going to continue to expand from every county in this state to every state in the nation. It's Cowboy State Politics. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson behind the silver microphone. Thank you for listening to the show. I really appreciate it. Actually, you have no idea how much I miss being behind the microphone and being able to talk to you each and every day. And, you know, had you asked me when I started Cowboy State Politics how big of a place that this would take up in my heart, I never would have been able to describe what it is now. But, you know, this is what I was apparently born to do, and I'm doing it every day. And I can't tell you how thankful I am that you listen to the program. Well, before the break, we were talking about Joe McCarthy, and he's claiming that Donald Trump and his entire family are preparing for civil war. Well, the reality is that it is probably the Democrats who are doing that, because conservatives, first of all, that's not our first. That's not going to be our first resort, right? We're not going to look at things and say, "Wow, we lost an election, civil war time, baby." But if you look at the actions of the left, they've tried to assassinate Donald Trump twice. And nobody can convince me that those were just two crazy people that decided to shoot the president. There are lots of crazy people all over the place, and it is not very often that we have one assassination attempt, not to mention two. And so you can't convince me that the Democrats aren't in the business of win this election at all costs. And I think you're seeing exactly that. Joe Scarborough is making up all sorts of crazy claims. And, well, in fact, let's just let him say it.
The fact that J.D. Vance and Trump's family would out and out say what they said takes the threat of violence, takes the threat beyond where it was even leading up to January the 6th. This is an increasingly desperate person, an increasingly desperate family who's preparing for civil war. They just are.
All right, so who has the violent rhetoric now? Who is saying dangerous, crazy things now? Is it Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Eric Trump and Laura Trump? Are they the ones that are saying crazy, dangerous things? No, it's Joe Scarborough saying, well, they're preparing for civil war. Do you have any idea how incredibly destructive the Civil War was? Over 500,000 people lost their lives. It nearly destroyed the entire country. And here you have Joe Scarborough saying, well, it's Donald Trump. He's preparing for civil war. And Scarborough throws it around like that's just some sort of throw out comment. It's something that he repeats constantly. And you can tell, just listening to the tone of his voice, you can tell that that's something that he practices all the time. And it's almost a throwaway line for him. It's something that he just has in the old bag, and whenever necessary, he pulls it out and tosses it out on the table. You can tell that. He's very used to saying it. So I mean, I ask you again, who is saying dangerous things? Is it the Trumps or is it Joe Scarborough? I think you know the answer to that, but let's continue.
Talking about they're trying to kill him. Democrats are trying to kill him. This is it, and the lies.
They are trying to kill him. In fact, they've tried twice. So that's not a lie, Joe. Those things happened. And, perhaps this tells us that Democrats kind of live in this fantasy world where they can deny objective reality. And actually, I think we've just stumbled upon it. And, we've known this for a long time. But the Democrats make a habit out of absolutely denying reality. And it's not just in this case. It's everything. That men can become women, that women can become men, that you can have your own truth, that it doesn't matter what facts are. I mean, if you don't believe them, then that's not your truth. That they deny objective reality. They deny the events on the ground, that two times somebody tried to kill President Trump, and to claim that that's just violent rhetoric. It's just idiotic.
Think about this. I saw part of Donald Trump's speech this weekend. It was remarkable, the lies, not just on things this year, but even on policy. He'd just make up things and just throw it out there. And I'd be shocked if the audience was really that stupid to believe the crazy lies that he was throwing out there. But he does it so much. It is the falsehood, the firehood of falsehoods. But they continue lying about 2020. Vance continues lying about 2020. Trump continues lying about 2020. Senators will not say on Sunday news shows that Donald Trump lost in 2020, despite the fact Republican officials in every one of those states that mattered said that, yes, in fact, Donald Trump lost. Brian Kemp said it in Georgia. Republican officials said it in Michigan. Republican officials said it in Pennsylvania. They said it in Arizona. They have said it repeatedly. Trump and Vance lying about people of Ohio eating dogs and cats.
Okay, well, that's actually a report on the ground. And we know that Democrats like Joe Scarborough and Karine Jean-Pierre, they don't believe in reality. They don't believe in truth. And the fact is that what Donald Trump said at the debate about Haitian migrants eating dogs and cats, that was reports on the ground. Those were anecdotal reports from people who actually live there. So I don't know how, and in history, I'm a historian, and when you're studying it, you want to get back as close as you can anyway to original sources. The older, the better. And so if you can get back to a firsthand account of whatever happened, that's usually the most accurate. And that's what Donald Trump was saying at the debate. Now, I don't know. I haven't seen any other evidence other than that. But it's absolutely true that Springfield, Ohio does have an immigrant problem, that most of them are Haitian migrants, that many of them are illegal, that crime is through the roof. And so, I mean, to deny that there is a migrant problem there, I mean, that's, again, you're just disregarding reality. You're disregarding the facts that are on the ground. And I mean, this is old hat for Joe Scarborough, but anyway, let's continue, see what all the crap he has to say.
And yet the governor of Ohio, lifelong Republican, telling them to stop, that it is a lie. And now with the people of the Carolinas suffering in a way that only those who have gone through tragic hurricanes like Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Camille, and now this hurricane could imagine. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Eric Trump, everyone else in the Republican Party, entire news channels out and out lying about what's going on the ground there.
Well, I don't know that they're out and out lying, Joe. And generally speaking, and I'm not saying this is all true, I mean, true in every case, but you've got a lot of people saying, look, we're on the ground here in North Carolina, and FEMA is nowhere to be found. I just read you a news report from the Post Millennial that said, no, man, I looked for people and I couldn't find anybody. I finally found 2 FEMA agents with 2 ATF agents. But as far as like rescue efforts or anything like that, nothing on the ground. They're not there. They're running out of money. And just stating the obvious fact of the matter is not a lie just because you disagree with it. It means that you are the one that is misinformed, but truth is we got to get back to dealing in fact, that things that are verifiable. And unfortunately, the Democrats are unable to do that. Harris is not immune from all of this. She just recently gave an interview to 60 Minutes. And interestingly enough, 60 Minutes apparently got tired of all the rhetoric because they pressed her also on trying to be accurate, give me specifics. And she wasn't able to. From the Washington Free Beacon, in an article entitled Artless Dodger, Harris flustered in substance-free 60 Minutes interview. Substance-free 60 Minutes interview. And I quote, Vice President Kamala Harris went on 60 Minutes and attempted to answer some of the toughest questions she's faced. A really low bar, by the way, since taking over the Democrat nomination from 81-year-old Sleepy Joe Biden, who is technically still the president. But like I said, he ain't making the decisions. She was meandering and evasive throughout the interview with Bill Whitaker of CBS News, who had to politely repeat the question on several occasions. There's no telling how confounding Harris's answers must have been in real time. The network's producers saw fit to liberally and sloppily edit the conversation. They included remarks into basic English. They included a considerable amount of overdubbed editorializing from Whitaker, as if he were translating Harris's remarks into basic English. They made clear at the outset that Harris's opponent, Donald Trump, declined to participate. Quote, Harris says she'll press Congress to pass a federal ban on price gouging for food and groceries, but details are yet to be defined, Whitaker said in post-production remarks as Harris continued to ramble on screen at a low volume. He was attempting to translate Harris's answer to his question about rampant inflation during the Biden-Harris administration. Again, the Harris administration. We now have an economy that is thriving by all macroeconomic measures, Harris bragged, before struggling to articulate a plan that would help normal Americans who don't follow macroeconomic trends. All right, so let's just take a listen to, and I've got the whole thing from CBS News on the soundbite. I don't know if we're listening to all of it. Well, actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and take our last break, and then we'll come back and hit 60 minutes. It's amazing, my friends. The part of the conversation I couldn't find is when he attacks her flip-flops, but I'll have that for you tomorrow. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back to the interview from 60 Minutes. are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble Room, Tom Kelly from Wide Right Turn, and the lovely Christine from The Hair Affair. And of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics. Before the break, we were talking about the 60 Minutes interview that Kamala Harris sat down for, and what a disaster it turned into. So much so that CBS News had to edit the interview and only show you select portions of it. And the truth is, they probably picked out the better of the bunch. Just imagine what they left out. So let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of it, just so you can tell how bad this thing went.
Harris has been a candidate for president for just 2.5 months, and the post-convention honeymoon is over. Your economic plan would add $3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade.
Now listen to this.
How are you going to pay for that?
Okay, so the other economists that have reviewed my plan versus my opponent and determined that my economic plan would strengthen America's economy, his would weaken it.
But
My plan, Bill, if you don't mind, my plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class, and you strengthen America's economy. Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy.
But pardon me, Madam Vice President, the question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Now listen to her answer.
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes.
Harris says she'll press Congress to pass a federal ban on price gouging for food and groceries, but details are yet to be defined. But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
You know, when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about because their constituents know exactly what I'm talking about.
Registered voters still say they don't know you. They don't know what makes you tick. And why do you think that is? What's the disconnect?
It's an election, Bill. In the last 4 years, I have been Vice President of the United States.
Okay,
And I have
so
been traveling.
you can tell that they edited the crap out of this thing and that they only picked out the better parts of it. And still, to make it look like it was an honest news program, they had to be even more critical of it. And I don't understand how any of these news correspondents, so-called news correspondents, can sit down with Kamala Harris and listen to that bullcrap for that long and not just get up and walk away. If she's not going to answer any question, there's no reason to have an interview in the very first place. And it's, there's a lot of interviews that I've done where I've just decided, okay, I'm just going to let them talk. And one of those was Gail Simmons. At least Gail Simmons was able to at least try to answer the question, even though it took her 5 minutes and going around in a circle to try to get there. But at least she tried to answer the question. She's full of more bullcrap than anybody I know. Well, and I don't know Kamala Harris, so I guess she's probably full of more bullcrap. But it continued on, and Whitaker tried over and over to get her to give specifics. How are you going to do this? How are you going to pay for it? And, just taxing the rich people is not going to be enough money to cover the $3.5 trillion that her economic plan is going to generate. Now, another interesting thing in here is in the same question. Let's see here. Well, the article I printed off doesn't say it, but the question basically was, economists say that your plan is going to cost $3.5 trillion and Trump's is going to cost $17 trillion. Well, the reason they say that is economists don't really look at the reality of tax cuts. It is an absolute economic fact that it's an inverse relationship between economic output and tax collection and the overall tax rates. If you lower taxes, tax revenue goes up. We've even seen this in Wyoming. There's a great committee meeting that it was, I think it was revenue. And the mayor of Cheyenne was in there. And he said, it's a funny thing. We lost out on that 1% extra tax. And wouldn't you know, tax revenue went up. But we're going to try to get that 1% tax back. Tax revenue goes up because people have more money in their pocket to spend. They will spend it if you let them. But the problem is Democrats don't believe in that. They don't believe that in a free market in which if you are in control of your own money, that you will more freely spend it. They don't believe in that. The truth is the government has to take your money from you so that they can spend it because, of course, they know how to best take care of you and your family and everything about you. And so all they need you to do is just sit there and exist. They'll take care of everything. And that's one of the reasons why the Democrat plans always fail, is because they defy economic facts, things that we have learned for a very long time, that if you have a free market, it will take care of itself. Will some businesses fail? Yeah. If they're a crappy idea and they overtap the market, or if they become, obsolete. I don't see any strikes coming from telephone operators or buggy drivers. No, I don't see anything like that at all, because those occupations became obsolete, and those folks who were in them either had to transition to a new part of the economy, or they just went out of business. But that's the free market. If you leave the free market alone, it will take care of itself. And it will provide enough tax revenue to do whatever it is that you need to do to, essential services, roads, bridges, police, fire, whatever the case may be. The free market will take care of itself. But when you start monkeying with it and start jacking with the tax rates, well, then things are going to go to crap. Your revenue is going to go down, and you're going to have to continue to increase taxes, which, of course, will have the result of lower tax revenue. And that, on the morning show, Joey and I talked about Amendment A that's going to be on the Wyoming Constitution, or it's going to be on the ballot in the general election to amend the Wyoming Constitution. And what they're trying to do is create a separate class of property called residential property. Right now, residential and commercial property are tied together, so you can't raise taxes on businesses without raising taxes on houses. Well, this constitutional amendment would separate the two, and it would allow the government to tax those two things independently. So essentially, the constitutional amendment is a license for the legislature to monkey with the tax rates so that they can raise business taxes, or residential taxes for that matter, in order to fund their whatever plan they're wanting to do. And I mean, it absolutely needs to be voted down. Do not vote for Constitutional Amendment A. In fact, vote nay on Amendment A. That was a great episode I published 2 years ago when there was another constitutional amendment on the ballot. That was a great episode. Vote nay on Amendment A. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left in the program, and I think I want to end on Elon Musk talking to Tucker Carlson. And he makes the point that if Kamala Harris wins, she will absolutely try to shut down X. And the reason she will, or at least throttle it back so much that it doesn't have any effect whatsoever, is that Elon Musk has tried to turn X into a free and open marketplace of ideas, a free speech zone, as it were. But he was sitting down with Tucker Carlson, and this is from the Daily Caller, and I quote, Tesla CEO and ex-owner Elon Musk said Vice President Kamala Harris will launch, quote, lawfare in an attempt to shut down X by any means possible if she wins the 2024 presidential election. Musk sat down for a 2-hour interview with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson, a co-founder of the Daily Caller and the Daily Caller News Foundation, and it was released Monday. Musk said that should Harris win the presidency, he anticipated that he and his companies would face legal action. Quote, if she wins, how can they let X continue in its current form, in its current role in American society? Carlson asked Musk about the future of the social network if Harris wins the presidency. He just responded, they won't. They will try to shut it down by any means possible. Here he is saying it.
If she wins, I mean, how can they let X continue in its current form, in its current role in American society?
They won't. They will try to shut it down by any means possible.
What do you mean by any means possible?
I mean, with either via, they'll try to pass laws. They'll try to prosecute the company, prosecute me. The amount of lawfare that we're seeing taking place is outrageous. There are many examples, but like the Department of Justice, for example, launched a huge lawsuit against SpaceX for failing to hire asylum seekers.
Come on.
Yeah,
asylum seekers?
Not asylum, those who've been granted asylum seekers. Now there's also a law called
All right. So basically he's saying that the Harris administration is going to use lawfare to try to do away with anybody who is in favor of free speech. And, I don't think that's too far out of the box. I think that they've absolutely telegraphed that, and there's no reason why to think that they wouldn't do that. It was just yesterday on the program that I played that piece of sound from Hillary Clinton, and let me see if I can find it for you again. Yeah, here we go, where she says, we'll lose all control of everything if we don't moderate social media. Here's Hillary saying that.
So I was happy to see you cite the work of Robert Putnam. Bowling alone made an impact on me. The discussion of social capital of the sort that I'm sure the Rodhams enjoyed in Park Ridge, right? Participation, belonging, volunteerism that is so missing today. You cite Jonathan Haidt, you cite Jean Twenge. Here's what disappoints me, and it's not about you, Madam Secretary. I'm shocked that no person, no Republican, no Democrat is championing this issue. The social science is so clear. The political science is so clear. Our fabric is frayed as a nation. Our kids are disconnected. Too much time behind closed doors on devices and not enough time replicating the experience of their parents and grandparents. So what do we do about it? What do we do about it for your grandkids?
Ooh, finally.
Well, Michael, there are people who are championing it, but it's been a long and difficult road to get anything done. Actually, we can look at the state of California, the state of New York. I think some other states have also taken action, but we need national action. And sadly, our Congress has been dysfunctional when it comes to addressing these threats to our children. So you're absolutely right. This should be at the top of every legislative political agenda. There should be a lot of things done. We should be, in my view, repealing something called Section 230, which gave, platforms on the internet immunity because they were thought to be just pass-throughs, that they shouldn't be judged for the content that is posted. But we now know that that was an overly simple view, that if the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just...
We lose total control if we don't moderate and censor people. And that's how these people think, my friends, that, if we don't censor your content, well, then the Democrats aren't going to have any control. And that is absolutely as it should be. Well, we've burned through another busy broadcast hour. Come back tomorrow for Cowboy State Politics Live. But until then, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.